Ben brought this banjo that didn't have the fifth string, and, I probably played it with a flat pick, but I was able to, pick out the notes that are sort of the outline of Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and I was like, yeah, look, I'm totally playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown, not realizing I was coming nowhere close to it.
Hey folks, how's everybody doing? This is Keith Billick here from the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. I hope you're all having a great day, and I really appreciate you joining me. Today we're going to have another one of these episodes guest hosted by my great friend Aaron Jonah Lewis. And if you're unfamiliar with Aaron or why I'm having him host the show every once in a while, you're going to want to go back to episode number 22, and there's also a bonus episode that preceded episode 22 introducing Aaron and what his relationship is to the show and why he's doing what he does, and that's a great episode on its own, so please go back and listen to that. But at any rate, suffice to say that Aaron is out there talking to banjo players, and if he's doing that anyway, what the heck, might as well send him with some recording gear and feature some of his discussions here on the podcast, and that's exactly what we're doing. Before I have Aaron take it away, however, I do need to start with some very special thanks, of course, to my beautiful, lovely Patreon supporters of the episode. Today we have two supporters of the show. The first person I need to thank is a gentleman named Dickinson Buell, and he likes to listen to the podcast while he's driving, and that actually reminds me, I need to warn you all about something because it's one of my pet peeves when someone who produces a radio commercial feels the need to put a police siren in it, because then you're, of course, driving in your car listening and a siren comes on the radio and you freak out for a second, right? Or am I the only one who does that? So at any rate, I hate it when people put sirens in their radio commercials. So here's my warning to you. During this episode, wherever, I'm not sure where Aaron was having this interview, there is some siren sounds in the background. So if you, like Dickinson, are listening to this while driving, please try to remain calm if you hear some siren noises. You should also check, maybe it's a real siren, but just know that that sound is coming up, and try to remain calm, like I said, and stay on the road and drive safely. The other supporter of today's podcast is Commodore Perry, and Commodore is a local to me banjo player. He lives in the Detroit area, and he has all sorts of very cool interests when he's not playing banjo, which is let's face it, that's the coolest interest that one could even have, right? So he's already a banjo player. He's cool in my book, but he's apparently really into smoking pipes and repairs old pipes. He also wants to give a shout out to his moped gang, the Team Rocket Moped Gang out of Detroit. So hats off to all you guys. Thanks very much to Dickinson and Commodore. And how about those names, folks? Dickinson and Commodore are the two supporters. Forget about it. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the podcast. It really means a lot. For the rest of you, please visit the page at patreon.com/banjopodcast. That's how you become a supporter of the show. And I always appreciate anybody who is generous enough to make a contribution on that page. Once again, that's patreon.com/banjopodcast. You can also contact the show by emailing pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. That's how you send me any feedback, suggestions, comments, criticisms, funny dad jokes, whatever you got. pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. That's how you get a hold of me. Today's special guest is an excellent banjo player out of the Washington, D.C. area named Sam Guthridge. Sam is best known for his playing with his current band, which is called the High and Wides. I was already an admirer of Sam's playing even before this interview, and I really enjoyed hearing his takes on how his band approaches the music, especially the first part that you'll hear almost right away in the interview, how they try to reincorporate some old things that have maybe been forgotten about the music that we all love. So I think you'll be interested in that too, and few sound clips of his playing in case you're unfamiliar with him. Really exciting band and some really insightful conversation. So here it is, Aaron Jonah Lewis, the guest host, interviewing special guest Sam Guthridge of the High and Wides.
Welcome to the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. I'm your guest host, Aaron Jonah Lewis, and I'm here today with banjo player Sam Guthridge. He's from the DC, Baltimore area, and he's the banjo player with the High and Wides. He also plays with Only Lonesome, and we're going to talk today about the way that you're playing the banjo these days, Sam. Welcome to the podcast, Sam Guthridge.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I also have to add that Sam and I have known each other for many years. We've recorded together the Square Peg Rounders album, and we've jammed together a lot, at least once a year. So
we'll try to leave the inside jokes to a minimum.
Yeah. So the main thing that I want you to talk to our banjo listening audience about is your band, the High and Wides, your new album, and the way that you're playing the banjo, because it's not traditional bluegrass, although it certainly has basis in traditional bluegrass methods. It doesn't sound like newgrass either. It sounds like something original. Yeah, why don't you tell us about it as if someone has never heard any of your music before?
So what we're doing, I'm playing the High and Wides, me on banjo and mandolin, Nate Grower on fiddle, Mark Dykeman playing guitar, and a bass player named Mike Pacino playing upright bass. So Mark, Nate, and I had previously played together since about 2006 in another band, Chester River Runoff, that was pretty active around the Mid-Atlantic. We started the High and Wides concurrently with that band in sort of its later years as a way to, when we started off, it was sort of to be a real throwback. Mark and I were learning mandolin and guitar and just working up brother duets. But as it became the main band, we started writing music that was definitely informed by that era and inspired by sort of the pre-bluegrass hillbilly music. And what we were trying to do, which is, there's so much weird stuff.
Yeah.
In that music that got whittled out completely, and we were trying to come up with music that's like, what would that sound like today if that hadn't been sort of distilled out of bluegrass? Because like bluegrass, the Monroe brothers had some wild stuff. Bill Monroe had some very different stuff early in his career, and then there's all these other great acts doing far out music, but the bluegrass world is sort of like distilled it out. It's like, instead of looking at the weird stuff around the edges, subsequent generations of bluegrass musicians have sort of like focused on what did all these bands have in common, and that's defined the sound. And we're just looking for all the things that have been left out and focusing on that. We wanted to sort of keep the elements of bluegrass that we'd been doing together for over a decade, harmony singing, a driving string band, while sort of fundamentally reimagining where we were coming from rhythmically. We didn't want the rhythm to just be rote, where it's like you come, okay, here's a song, here's the chords, bam, boom, 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 boom. We wanted to sort of custom craft a rhythm for each song, taking inspiration from that old weird hillbilly music and, other new things. We're not afraid of new. We really like television and the Talking Heads and stuff, and sort of new wave bands.
So I was going to ask, what were some of the influences aside from the pre-bluegrass brother duets you're talking about? And can we name some of those too? I always think of the Delmore brothers. It's like,
oh yeah, the Delmore brothers, example. The Callahan brothers, Maddox brothers, all the brothers,
Blue Sky Boys.
Yeah, that's not that might be somebody Mark has gotten into. I'm not.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, you're calling my bluff on that one, but
I'm not an expert either. Just a fan.
But and also like some of the older Rocky Road Blues with Bill Monroe. All these songs have such great different rhythms. The Western swing was in there. The blues was in there.
Yeah.
You hear rockabilly in it. And we're like, why take that out?
Right. So then what are some of the... Because if you listen... I mean, I listened to a little bit of the album and definitely looking forward to hearing more. It doesn't sound like a recreation of old pre-bluegrass brother duets. I can hear that influence in there, but what else is going into it? I mean, I know you guys listen to all kinds of stuff.
Philip Glass, New Wave, the post-punk, No Wave as well, like sort of we're not afraid of dissonance. And then, boy, it would be hard to speak for everybody.
But just for you, just speak for yourself. I mean, you're a songwriter as well, right? You're co-writing and making songs.
Yeah, we're working. I'm not the most prolific writer in the band, but I'm bringing things into it. There's some jazz influence. Our bass player Mike, on top of being just an excellent lyricist, was a working jazz bass player for a long time. So he brings both that jazz influence, and he also worked in Latin music. He's bringing those kinds of feels into the band. There's a song that's got kind of a Latin feel on it. It's nice to have a bass player who's got a lot of ideas and is versatile. And it's like, each song he's able to come up with something totally unique and cool to make the rhythm pop and make it sound like something you've not heard before coming out of a string band.
And the flames rolled up in his eye, but he left the sea behind, and he had no water to cool his fevered mind.
That's something I think about a lot, is how much do people want to hear something that they haven't heard before versus how much do people want to hear something that sounds just like something that they've heard before?
It's interesting because in the bluegrass world, it's a high compliment for someone to say you sound exactly like music that was made 60 years ago. That's cool. That's not the praise I'm looking for necessarily. Yeah. We've actually been surprised at how well we're received by traditionalists because I think they can hear the elements and the fact that we've gone to school on this stuff. There's a lot of bands that are doing different things with the string band format that you can tell never went to school on the music. They're just sort of like, okay, here's some instruments, let's just bang on them and do something different. But it's like, we can do faithful renditions of Flat and Scruggs songs or whatever. We would be capable of doing it. It's just not what we're choosing to do. And I think audiences can appreciate, we're trying to grow the music in the same way that the original innovators were.
Exactly, right. Yes, that's the thing that I was just talking about in a workshop the other day. Yes, it's great to learn how to recreate old sounds. That's a good exercise. But what I'm really interested in is recreating that imaginative spark that created that music in the first place, because you could listen to the oldest recorded examples of a tune and that doesn't give you the ultimate source, because the ultimate source was somebody who was just like, I feel like playing this, I'm going to play it this way today, and then that got recorded eventually, maybe generations later. So instead of saying, well, don't listen to the new guys, you got to listen to the old guys, it's like, yeah, listen to everybody, but really what you need to look for is that creative spirit, that imagination, and that's what you want to cultivate more than being able to play something exactly the same way someone else played it.
Yeah, and also the original sources, they were playing what the people recording them wanted them to play. I think a lot of those guys would have been able to play ragtime or jazz or something like that, but what people were coming around and asking them to play was the stuff from the Civil War veteran up the mountain taught you, and not what have you been experimenting with lately.
Right.
So,
Well, speaking of experimenting, why don't we go back to the beginning of your musical life? How did you get started with music and with the banjo in particular?
I got started as a trumpet player.
How old were you when you were playing trumpet? Is it like
I
high
started
school band, middle school?
3rd grade.
Nice.
And then school band. I played trumpet in school band and saxophone, and I borrowed a trombone and messed around with that for a while. I was into horns mostly, and I started playing guitar at about 12, and was all self-taught and completely undisciplined. But I guess one thing that was lucky for me was that my high school, which was not like an arts high school, it was just a regular public high school, had a music theory program, or had a music theory class that was very good. And I took that as a freshman in high school, and from there on, all of the, I could learn these instruments through the lens of that. I could look at a piece of music, and instead of looking to a chart, this is how to finger an E7, 9, whatever chord. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Even though that is an actual chord.
That's the Jimi Hendrix chord.
E7 sharp 9.
Yeah.
I'd say, okay, well, I know how to write for like a 4-voice chorus.
Oh yeah, 18th century part writing rules, right?
Yeah, exactly, the old rules. And I'd say, okay, so where would my fingers go to make that chord based on these notes? So I sort of learned it all backwards, and I never my guitar playing ended up with a lot of like technical deficiencies, but so that's just the way it is. I'm still a technically deficient guitar player. But I guess the first time I picked up a banjo was hanging out with our friend Ben Belcher, who I went to high school with. And around the end of high school, we had been just hiking out down to the Potomac and playing guitars. And one day he brought a banjo with a broken 5th string, but nonetheless, it's like I had if I can backtrack, I had grown up listening to also WAMU, which at the time had bluegrass all afternoon in D.C. This is all in Arlington, Virginia. We're missing important chapters.
It's all getting filled in. Yeah.
I'm filling it in all
Where did
backwards.
you grow up? Okay.
Arlington.
Right. Yep. Okay.
So, I'd always loved the sound of the banjo, and I was like, why is there that drone note? That's so interesting. It's like a sitar, It's so being fascinated by that sound. And Ben brought this banjo that didn't have the 5th string, and I probably played it with a flat pick, but I was able to like pick out the notes that are sort of the outline of Foggy Mountain Breakdown, and I was like, yeah, look, I'm totally playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown, not realizing I was coming nowhere close to it. And later in that summer, by sheer coincidence, my dentist said, hey, you play instruments, would you like this banjo that a patient traded me for work in the 60s?
Wow.
And he said, just take it home and mess around with it, and if you end up liking it, you can pay me for it then. And so it was this old K from the 50s. A friend still has it. Mike from the High and Wides actually has it now. I played it poorly for a while in the context of, I knew that I was supposed to play it with 3 fingers, but I was just messing around with it, and I would play it poorly within the context of like trying to play rock band in rock bands. There'd be like a token banjo song, but I finally got some lessons from a teacher who was very big on fundamentals, and got my like right hand technique drilled into me, and also was told what to listen to, and I sort of took off from there.
Well, that's great. I want to continue with your story, but let's take a little detour and find out a little bit, because you do a lot of teaching. And so what did you learn from that teacher, like in a brief kind of nutshell, like about the basics of technique and what to listen to?
Copy Earl.
Right.
He sounded good, but the sort of mechanics of the right hand, keeping your motion, this would be easier shown than described, but keep your right hand motion to a minimum, and it's also the way to engage your picks with the string. Like I was taught to have a relaxed, the knuckle right below your picks should actually have give to it. and that's what you're actually like engaging and working with the string and popping it. And I feel like that's a big part of it. But it's also just learn from the Earl book, take it from there, and then, you know, with just armed with these basic fundamentals of how not to play wrong with my right hand, I sort of figured it out from, you know, their old music theory again, and slowing recordings down and figuring them out. Banjo was the first instrument that I approached with any kind of discipline, and that's sort of where the light went off. And it's like, okay, here I go.
Recommended listening being Flat and Scruggs.
Flat and Scruggs, you know, get the Bear Family box set and just load it all onto an iPod and just listen to it a lot. Get the sound in your head.
Yeah.
And then there's so many great traditional banjo players. If you're like, you know, who is your favorite traditional bluegrass banjo player? I probably wouldn't say Earl Scruggs. You know, I'd probably, like, there's so many dudes who are, well,
who would it be?
The face you're making right now.
Just who is it?
You know, it's, Paul Sylvius is a big favorite. He played with Dell in the 80s and Joe Val. It's just quirky. I really admire the guys. Him, Tom Adams is another who, but yeah, Paul Sylvius is like a big favorite. Alan Shelton. I admire people who sort of take the Scruggs rule book and do something quirky and inventive with it. I like quirky.
That's kind of where we get to where we are now with your playing, right? Or tell us more about, like, how did you get from the basics to where we are now? I mean, there was Chester River Runoff for many years.
Yes,
that was kind of experimental band, but also traditional.
It was more or less traditional. I mean, it's just, you know, I'd study the Tony Trischka books. You know, I'd learn try to learn fiddle tunes note for note. Whenever I'd hear a break, I'd figure it out. I try to figure out what players were doing, but then really the key ingredient is just thousands and thousands of hours of stage time. And it's like, and being around good musicians. When Nate Grower started playing with the Runoff, even though he was like 10 years younger or 6 years younger, how old do you have to be to play in a bar? He was that number of years younger. You know, he was so much better than me, and I was just like getting embarrassed playing next to this great fiddle player. And we were working so many gigs. We were playing triple headers. We'd get up, like, play a farmer's market and then go play a wedding or a private party and then go play a bar in the same day. Like, we just worked so much and so much hours on stage next to particularly him, improvising, trying to keep from getting stale. It's like always pushing yourself to try something new. But yeah, we'd be playing like 7 hours a day. And it's like, try to keep it fresh. So you just try stuff and see what happens, man.
It's great you were able to do that. I mean, sometimes I lament how hard it is to fill your time up with stage time like that, because, you know, you listen to old recordings of, well, not every band was like this, but, you know, a lot of those old recordings that I really like, the guys, they'd have an afternoon gig, an evening gig, then they'd be on the radio, then they'd do a late night dance. It was like 6 days a week like that. And that's how you get good, just doing it a lot. If there's not that much demand for live music, then you're just going to be practicing at home, which is still good, but it's not the same. We
created our own demand by being this... living in an area where there weren't a lot of bands on the Eastern Shore of Maryland. Just, you know, there was a demand for music. We were just like the cool band on the Eastern Shore for years. We never really toured that much, but we're able to stay busy all the time. Which I tell touring musician friends now. It's like, you know, or would even tell them then. It's like, yeah, you know, it's like when I was 27, I didn't think this was that cool, but looking back, it's like, oh, yeah, we played 100 gigs this year and slept in our own beds every night. and
that's really great.
We were a full-time band that managed to stay busy by being versatile and just keeping local. You know, it's like playing dances and weddings and, you know, being able to change hats multiple times in a day to give people what they wanted when they were hiring a band. The Mid-Atlantic is a good place for that. If that's what you're trying to do, there's...
Okay, maybe I'll move here after all.
Yeah.
No, Detroit's all right too. Anyway, it's not about me. It's about Sam Guthridge today. We're talking about the banjo, the way he plays. Tell us about your instrument.
Okay.
Is this your main instrument?
Oh, it is now. This at the moment, I have 3 banjos that I sort of rotate between. This is my favorite and has been for a long time. It's based on a true story. It's a bracket shoe Gibson pot from 1928. You're not a gearhead.
No, that's the Holy Grail, man.
Yeah, well, no, it's not.
Isn't it?
The one-piece flanges are the Holy Grail.
Oh.
The bracket shoe is not as highly regarded, but it was bracket shoe resonator pot with a TB2 style neck. It's just got it's got an unusual headstock for a Gibson. Different inlays. I like the way it looks. It's a cool looking banjo, but I really like the way it sounds. It's got this great, like, our friend Tom Bailey said, it's like, I love that banjo. It's got spooky mid-range. So it's always, and it does. It's got like this. It's got like all this. It's got sustain. It's got all the stuff you want, and it's nice and balanced, and it's
nice.
And it also doesn't weigh very much.
Oh, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
So while you got the banjo and you're picking a little, why don't you share like something you're working on lately? Just some kind of technique stuff or licks that you're messing around with.
Licks. When we started the high and wides and sort of started developing what we were doing, I wanted to be able to play banjoistically without using a capo in all sorts of keys. Like, we have a song that's an F sharp with no capo, and I'm like, it's like all the standard thing to do as a banjo player when you get a weird key thrown at you and you're not using a capo is to just start playing single string. And it's like, no, I want to always... it's like there's so much you can do with the open strings. It's like E, the song Blue Driver on the record. It's like, it's like E is a great key. There's just so much cool stuff you can do that's out of... every time we come up with a song, I'm always like, oh, let's put it in some stupid key. It's like, why would Michael write a song and be like, let's do this in D, and I'll be like, let's do it in E flat, and then you end up with Tell Me on the album, the song Tell Me on the album, where we haven't played that one in a while, but what are some of the new licks? I don't know. I've been into F. It's like there's so much more to it. It's like B. I don't know. Anybody could do it. I don't know really how unexplored this is. I'm not trying to copy other people's ways of solving these problems.
Right.
Is just sort of, and
reinventing the wheel. No, discovering it for yourself.
Discovering it for myself. I don't know if this is really groundbreaking territory, but it's like the way we're building songs off it is. It's like I'm trying to, there are songs where I'll just play rolling banjo through a song. Of course, but then there's also, I'm doing a lot of like dead thumb, like bluesy. Trying to.
Yeah.
The banjo can do stuff. I don't.
It's so versatile.
I feel like I'm describing what I'm working on. It's always a combination between like melodic what everybody tells you these days. It's like I'm combining melodic and single string and Scruggs style playing seamlessly. You know, I guess once you get to that point, I haven't figured out a next place to go, except for like, I don't know, playing with a plectrum or something.
Yeah, so as far as like techniques you can do with your right hand, that's kind of like what we know about. That's kind of like what's available. Now the question is, what kind of music are you going to make?
Yeah,
because those are the techniques. What are you going to do?
And what I'm trying to do is play less. You know, trying to write more, think more riff in terms of like riff based songs.
So
rather than playing like streams of notes.
Solos and backup, is that kind of a dichotomy that you deal with, or is that kind of not really part of the picture?
There are songs, you know, we'll do songs with solos, but there's also we don't always get to have Nate on fiddle, but particularly like me and Nate have been playing leads in bands together for hundreds of gigs, if not over 1,000. Who knows? It's been a long time, and we have like we can read each other's minds. We're able to have songs where the solos aren't specified, and we might just both be soloing at the same time, but instead of trading fours, or like I'm gonna take over and play like this crazy epic solo, we're both like we try to work off each other and support each other, the ideas that we're each doing, because it's something that we don't even really have to think that hard about. But it's also like try to surprise each other. He still surprises me. Every time we play a gig, he does stuff that I've never heard him do before, which is really impressive after all these years. You know, it's great to have people around you that push you like that.
So what kind of I know you're into microphones too, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's talk about microphones and banjos.
Yeah, the microphone is, to me, I prefer playing mic'd to direct live. It's an extension of the instrument. Like for each gig, I think it's something like, what kind of room are we going to be in? What kind of show are we putting on? How am I feeling today? And it really, there are so many ways to color the tone of the instrument, and then to work that microphone to produce different colorations of tone. It's like, am I going to play really soft right up on it? And, you know, it's like, play really gently right up on it to be loud, and then like play really hard at a distance to be quiet. You know, it doesn't matter what you're doing. It matters what's going into that microphone and out there. I don't know. My favorite's M160, Biodynamic M160 ribbon mic is a favorite live. I love the 635A by Electro Voice, which is, it's got a gritty tone. It's an Omni. People are afraid of using Omnis, but I've been able to use it at a lot of gigs. Electro Voice RE20, like, I just love. Probably top favorite is the M160, which is like a super dark microphone. And
how many mics have you gone through?
A lot of mics.
How did this journey begin? Because some people go through their whole career just like, whatever you put in front of me, I don't care, I'll play into it. It's not my job.
I don't know. Well, it's, you know, I think I caught the disease from Mark, because that's the way Mark is. Mark Dykman, the guitar player from the High and Wides, he's an engineer. He engineered our album, and he's very knowledgeable about microphones. He's also got access to friends who have stuff, and so it's always early in the runoff days when we were just playing into 57s and 58s, he'd be the one who'd show up. It's like, oh, just try this on the banjo. I want to see how this works today. And then I sort of got the bug from him and realized like what a difference it can make. It's like it can, depending on how you feel like you're going to play, what your mood is. Like you want to color the instrument in a different way to like convey. Cool. You can have like a brash tone.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I love, there are days like the 635 is like it just like shreds the top end. It's like very detailed, but it shreds the top end. So it's like my banjo's coming through an AM radio in like a totally badass way, and I feel really rock and roll doing it. It's like, you know, I don't want to use effects pedals, but I can change my mic.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
nice. Well, great. Let's talk about something else. How about your practice routine? Are you pretty disciplined about your routine, or
it changes a lot.
Yeah.
As far as my advantages for playing the instrument, it's like the knowledge of theory, and at this point I'm pretty fearless about improvising and trying things and having no fear of sounding bad. It's because I'm making mistakes. I'm not like I don't feel like I'm a particularly adept player, so I do lots of right hand drills with a metronome. I've got I could spend an hour and a half talking about the different right hand stuff that I do. And
give us a little taste.
Okay, I almost want to start up a metronome.
If you want.
Why not? To demonstrate it. It's like, I might use that.
That's 152. Yeah. What do you do, like 100?
I had a hard time playing fast. You might remember from when I would play with you years ago, I was never able to play as fast as you guys.
We played fast, but I don't know if we played well.
You played, you know, the hot seats, or the former name of the hot seats. We don't need to go into, I don't know how risky, how blue we need to get right now.
People who know.
Anyway, filling with you guys, I could never play fast enough. And then I had this whole realization one day when I was at a Meat Puppets show, and I was watching the bass player play, and he was using 2 fingers and playing this very fast bass line. And it's like, I wonder if I can do that. And I was like, trying to go back and forth between 2 fingers. And then I realized, like, your limitation in how fast you can play a roll, practicing rolls are not going to make you faster. Your limitation is how fast you can go back and forth between your different fingers. You know, if you can go from your thumb to your index quickly, and then from your index to your middle quickly, but you can only go back from your index to your middle. From your middle to your index slowly. Bam, that's your top end. So you got to work like all the different pairings of your fingers. So it's like, instead of practicing rolls as much, I would go back and forth between pairings of fingers, like thumb index, get it as fast as I could, like on like every different combination of strings that could come up in, and on the same string, and then, like, you know, index middle, just over and over as quick as. You know, it's like, how fast can you get that?
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, how fast can you get from your thumb and your middle and back? That way you find weak points. You know, that's how you isolate, and it's also how you isolate weak points in your timing.
That's what I do too, man.
It's like,
I work with that too. It's all in here.
It's in the banjo tutor. Oh, I'm
100 years ago.
Oh, good.
But no, you discover it for yourself. That's what makes it meaningful.
Yeah, and
I remember you told me once that you practice every roll on every string.
I was trying that for a while. I've gone through a lot of different routines, but it's like.
And you're also practicing vocal warm-ups every day. How does that fit into the banjo practice? Is there no connection, or is
no connection?
Okay.
I
just for singing, just to be able to sing.
Yeah. I sing in the band. I'm a singer. I feel like
I want you to say something like, I'm singing through the banjo.
Singing through the banjo.
And therefore I need to be able to sing with my own voice.
I feel like I wouldn't have had all the opportunities I've had to become a competent banjo player if it hadn't been for being able to sing. And I went for years just taking it for granted that, you know, I was like singing at a certain level, and that's where I was. Now I'm trying to become a better singer.
I'm with you.
You know, it's there's knowing how to run a PA, knowing how to book gigs. It's like I feel like that kept me working as a mediocre banjo player long enough to become an okay banjo player. And it's like wherever people would say I would fall now. Yeah. But yeah, it's like I could describe right hand drills that I do for an hour, but it's like the main things are like practice playing between the clicks of a metronome that's going very fast, like practice rolls or going back and forth between two fingers. If you can play between the clicks of a metronome that's going like 190 beats a minute.
What do you mean between the clicks?
Like,
you want to demonstrate? This is 152.
It's like I have to work up to this, but like, okay, so here's this metronome that's going, and it's like, I'll just do like a simple forward roll if I can, and I'm picturing the metronome as being the backbeat of as like a mandolin, like. Da, 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 da. There's your mandolin, and it's like.
I get what you mean.
So if you can do that and you can speed it up enough, it's like that. That
agreed.
That will humble you like nobody else's business. Like you talk about finding the weak points in your roll. Man, do that at any tempo.
Do you know what's another metronome exercise I like to do when I'm practicing my rolls and finger style stuff is to slow it way down and see if I can continue playing 200 beats per minute, but it's on 40.
Oh yeah, that was actually that was another thing I was going to say. It's like I work on, I've hopefully outgrown this, but I think for a while I definitely had a rep within the band as being really bad at kickoffs. And so, it's like, so I'll practice. Yeah. So it's like you take your metronome at 152 or, here's your, I'm not that warmed up, but it's like, okay, here's like, 131, whatever. That's fine. It's like, and it's like, okay, now what's half of 131? Well, it doesn't have one, but 65. So it's like your approximate
65 and a half.
Yeah. But also the point is to move it slightly each time. Right. It's like. It's like, oh, and let me fall. Here's 33, half, slightly more than half again. At the same time I'm doing the like bump up your speed drill.
Right.
I'm trying to keep track of too many things.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, then take it down to 16.
Yeah.
If you can groove, or 10. It's like if you can groove and have a click that's happening every 10 seconds and you know exactly where it is, it's like your macro. You got to work on your micro timing and your macro timing. Your macro timing will be insane if you can like groove.
So you could probably say something about like what it means to you when someone says old time 3-finger picking.
Ah, yes.
What is old time? I guess we all have some idea of what old time music is. I don't really like that label myself, but it's what we have.
Yeah. For all the time I've been playing, as a bluegrass style player, I generally would say, now that I'm in the high and wides era of my development as a player, who knows what I'd call myself. But for a long time, I'd always consider myself an old time musician. There's nothing wrong with 3-finger banjo and old time music,
Preaching to the choir here.
It's the sound of, it's the sound of a lot of the old Galax bands, and like that's sort of the Galax. We've both gone to that fiddlers convention for years and years, and it's been a big influence on both of us. And I think most of my friends were playing the old time music, so hanging out in those that's where I was comfortable. Even as a 3-finger player, and people are very tolerant of it. And it's like, I remember the first year I went, I would just like hang out in these jams and try to get my roll going and then copy what fretless banjo players were doing. You know, so I feel like, you know, it's like, you know, it's like, I'm not, you know, just trying to have all those like surges and like put the accents in different places.
I love playing fretless.
Yeah.
So does it mean playing three finger, playing in an old time jam or something? Does it mean just do whatever you want, or does it mean you're emulating some other instrument style, or does it mean you put on restrictions on yourself?
You have to. You have to. You know, there's certain things that I'll do that are where I jump out ahead, like both of our favorites, Gene Mead, the guitar player, like that will that's an influence. You know, it's like, it's like this is like a whole other part of my brain that I turn on for like a week a year. Yeah. And I'm trying to call on it right now, but it's unless I'm getting to play with some in a really good old time jam, which just isn't like where I've spent a lot of time lately. But
maybe we'll do that tonight.
Yeah, we'll do that tonight. I'll play three finger old time. I'll reawaken those muscles. But it's
fun.
The main key is you have to accept the supremacy of the fiddle. and work with it. You know, it's just and enjoy it and play with the fiddle player and support it. And it's like I've gotten to play with so many great fiddle players.
It's funny though,
including you and
the
you know,
old time, it's like it gets so formulaic. It's like, well, you have to have a fiddle first of all, then you have to have a banjo and a guitar, and the banjo has to be clawhammer, and then if a bass is okay, mandolin, I don't know, maybe. And then, you know, it gets on like this hierarchy. Have you ever been to an old time jam without any fiddlers?
No, I really like playing with fiddle players, man.
Me too. Hey, no, I'm not saying there's anything wrong. It's just this kind of like requirements of like, well, if there's no fiddle, then it's not an old time jam. Or, you know, like what if it's just a banjo and someone who likes to dance? Or, you know, what if it's just someone who's got a guitar, someone with some bones, and someone singing?
I suppose I would focus on playing something that's recognizable and follows a melody. And I'm like, you know, it's like, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to play Sally Ann in D, which I'm not in. No, that does not.
You can play Sail Away Ladies.
Yeah. Just try to play a song. Just keep it going. It's not for you. That's what I find enjoyable about playing old time music. It's like super group oriented. It doesn't. All I'm there to do is support.
Yeah.
And that's fun.
That's a great way of looking at it. And, you know, I often think about it as music for... It's not exclusively music for dancing to, because sometimes it's all about a song or a story. But often in the situations I'm in, it's all about either you've got people dancing or you want to have people dancing.
Yeah, that's just the groove is so addictive. Oh, and I thought about something I wanted to get back into in the like, what do you practice thing. This is just something I would encourage everybody to do. Something I also try to do and is to rethink licks that you've played 1,000 times and find new ways to approach it. Like, I had this really mind-blowing thing happen the other day. It's like, you know, the old Joe Clark. I had this whole thing where I was like, what if I went up on the second string and did that? You know, like how to play those exact notes on different strings. It's like,
oh yeah,
trying to come up with ways to like fool my right hand by playing the same notes with a completely different right hand pattern, or just like rethinking licks that everybody plays the same way. You know, it's like Pike County Breakdown. You know, it's like, why not do or it's like
nice.
It's like they all work. I don't know. That was one thing I wanted to touch on. Come take a lesson or something. All will be revealed.
I did have another question or two for you.
Sorry.
Did you have more?
No. It's just like, I remember I was thinking about that on the way down. It's like, I feel like it's so important to encourage people to not take the standard licks of bluegrass for granted. Don't just accept them as they are. Like, try and rethink how to get that same effect in a different way, and then allow that to be a springboard into coming up with your own thing.
You do a lot of improvising, don't you?
Yes.
Want to talk about how you got into improvising and how you approach improvising?
That's the hardest thing. That's the hardest thing to explain. How do you approach it? You know, it's I don't.
You just do it.
I mean,
just take a leap and.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's improvising is all about. It's like build up the mechanics of playing, and practice all the scales and all the stuff that you want. But really, when it comes down to it, it's just completely turning off your head and just realizing, oh, look at what I'm doing. That is unfortunately something that I do not know. I'm not sure how to explain, because you can teach somebody every lick in the book, every scale, but it's like teaching people how to improvise. It's like a mystery. I don't know. Or getting over the fear of it is. Yeah,
absolutely. That's everything. That's the main thing.
And just doing it and not being afraid to sound like an idiot.
Confidence. My main advice for someone says, how do you improvise? Is like, get used to making mistakes in front of people.
Yeah. There you go.
Get comfortable with that and you'll be fine. Because you're going to make mistakes. And the thing about improvising is to just turn that mistake into what you meant to do. Just be like, that's what I'm doing. I just did that.
Yeah.
Two questions. Okay, you can answer them separately or together. What would you say constitutes a good player? And the other question is, what do you see as the future of the banjo?
Ooh, what do I like? Man, a good player, timing and tone, and just like making everything sound on purpose and stand out, and there's so many great players I'd like to credit here. It's like, but around here, like Mike Mumford, who I've gotten to watch a lot. I've tried to avoid copying him because he's so like iconic and recognizable, but he's been a big influence just like watching and listening. It's like, how does this guy approach? How does he bear himself? And he's just like, everything he plays is so clear and heavy, and it's just like, this is exactly what I meant to do, and I'm giving you this idea, and it weighs 3,000 pounds. Bam. And it's like, that's what you're just listening for, that kind of confidence. It's like, you don't have to be playing the incredible notes to be an incredible player. It's like just having like a clarity of ideas and responding to the situation you're in, the band that you're in. Sounding good. A good player, they sound good. What can I say? I wrote a thesis on aesthetics, but I can't tell you. I can't tell you. Let me write it down after I look for some quotes from Kant. And then the future of the banjo. I don't know. We still have, I hope we still have enough of a civilization going forward to still have banjo music. Is banjo the size of civilization?
I don't know. Maybe I should have asked that.
Yeah, it's like, what is the future? I don't. All I've got is platitudes.
Because it's kind of a naive question from another time. It's a question from another time. It's when people thought that there was a future. All right, so quickly, yep. Are there any records besides your most recent one that you feel especially proud of playing on, that you want people to know about? You don't have to say the one that we played on together.
Okay. The High and Wides Lifted is the most recent project, and we're going to be starting to record another one. I play in another band around here that we didn't get into how I approach that, but I play in a very traditional band around the DC area, exclusively pretty much. That band rarely plays outside the Beltway, but called Only Lonesome. And we're like a Buzz Busby, Red Allen cover band. It's a ton of fun.
I love that.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so great.
So and cool. Is that onlylonesome.com or what?
Yeah, but we'd been playing for 5 years before we even got our picture taken together. It would be great to put an album out. Who knows if it'll happen or if I'll be proud of my playing on it.
Let's talk about anything that you want the listeners to know about that you've actually done.
I only want people to know about the things that I want to do. I want to assimilate the flow of a lot of great rappers into like bluegrass playing. I want to learn how to roll like Eminem spits rhymes and then record Flat and Scruggs covers that way.
You should have been at the jam last night. I
don't know. It's there's man, the High and Wide's record, Square Peg Rounders record is a great listen. My playing has progressed so much since then. My timing was like kind of loose on there. It's like the old time banjo playing that we talk about.
Just to wrap it up, just to tell us what you have on the horizon for the rest of the year, like gigs wise, if you want to catch you, if you're going to have a new release later this year.
Maybe later this year or maybe early next year. Depends on if the album gets stolen this time.
Right.
Which is another great story you should follow the High and Wides to hear how our album got stolen and we had to record it a second time. If the album doesn't get stolen this time, maybe later this year, just keep an eye on, highandwides.com.
It's thehighandwides.com.
SamGuthridge.com is my website. It's really bad, but it's funny. I'm up for anything. Hire me, and hire me, man.
I'll try anything twice.
I teach lessons.
You teach Skype lessons too?
I'm like kind of dense with computers, as you might guess if you look at my website.
I teach Skype lessons. I think
if somebody asked me to teach them a Skype lesson, I would totally teach them a Skype lesson.
Cool. All right. Well, there you have it, folks. Sam Guthridge, banjo player with the High and Wides, Only Lonesome, Baltimore, D.C. area, teacher, banjo player, songwriter, banjo composer, not great website maker, but great guy and good friend of mine. So that's going to be it for this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast.
Oh no, I played the tag wrong.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast with guest host Aaron Jonah Lewis featuring banjo player Sam Guthridge. The episode featured 3 sound clips. In order of appearance, they were the songs titled Caroline, The Ballad of Coxfield, and then Blue Driver, and those are all performed by the High and Wides, featuring Sam Guthridge on banjo, and those are off of their album called Lifted. Special thanks once again to today's Patreon supporters, Dickinson Buell and Commodore Perry. Go to patreon.com/banjopodcast to support the show. Email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com. And that's going to do it for today. Hope to see you all next time. Over and out.